Good afternoon, friends. Well, today's the day. I finally have the cam chest parts and everything I need to start the assembly on the 1966 Shovelhead. So I've got everything kind of laid out here. I've got my book to the right, and I have the cases together. The flywheels were reassembled. They were balanced and true and all that good stuff. So they have new bearings, both on the pinion shaft, crankshaft, and sprocket shaft. Everything's been cleaned up. Obviously, you can see that the cases have been vapor honed and everything's ready for assembly. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get the camera moved around, and I'm going to walk you guys through that process today. Now keep in mind, I'm no expert at this. So there's some things that I'm going to kind of fumble through, and there's going to be some things that I talk about probably way too much. I have not done this personally myself. I've seen it done a bunch of times. Most of what I'm going to do is going to be following the book. So if there are things that I'm doing wrong, feel free to let me know. And if there's things that I've helped you out with, of course, let me know that too. All right, as you can see, I have an empty cam chest here. I am pretty much ready to do all the things assembly-wise, including the oil pump, the breather, the cam itself, the little tray that goes on the bottom here, my pinion shaft, sprockets and all that good stuff, the idler gear and whatnot. So I'm going to start with the oil pump first. I think that's the best move to start there. So I'm going to go ahead and get that in place. I do have my oil pump gasket here. So what I like to do, or I want to do, is I want to go ahead and make sure that I have this going in the right direction. So I'll take a look at it. Obviously I'm fitting it wrong here. Now I'm fitting it right here, and you can see that the oil pump gasket fits like it should. So obviously this is going to slide in this way. What I want to do from here is I'm going to take a little bit of assembly lube and I'm going to put it onto the gasket itself. That way the gasket will adhere to the back and create a little bit of a barrier there so the gasket won't move and hopefully won't leak in the future. And I'm going to work on doing this on both sides. That way the gasket, of course, is wet and everything should hopefully seal up nicely once I have everything together. As you can see, I'm sliding the gasket into place here. There's a little guide pin here. Push it over the guide pin. There's another guide pin up here. Push it over that as well. And now with that in place, I'm actually going to oil the body of the oil pump itself. So with the oil pump in hand here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to oil the outer body here just to keep everything kind of, again, lubricated and give it a little bit of a barrier so that way nothing will leak. Of course, we'll get it in on the gears there. And of course, we want to make sure we have oil on the shaft here because we're going to slide it into that brass bushing, and that way everything is lubricated. Now that we have the shaft lubricated, we're going to go ahead and gently slide this thing in place. I'm going to move the engine a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Also, you want to hold the shaft on this side to make sure that it will go in and not push the gears out. We're going to take our time to gently guide this thing in. And as you can see, the oil pump is in place. Everything is setting up nicely. I'm going to repeat the process with the next gasket here. I'm going to go ahead and oil the one side. We'll put the gasket on. It goes in this direction here, like so. We'll oil up the one side of the gasket and then spread this around. Now I'll put our gasket in place. We'll stick it down. Next, we'll take our outer cover. Obviously, you can see that this is the direction it goes. This is the 50A-117. It goes on in this direction here. So I'm going to take, again, and I'm going to oil the surface here. I will, again, spread that around so everything is fairly equally, quote, coated. And then we'll put our outer cover in place. Taking a look at the manual, you can see that there is a specific place for each one of the nuts and lock washers to go in place. There's this specialty guy here, and this one goes on the top here, and then the rest are just lock washers and nuts. So we're going to take each one of the lock washers, put them in place. All right, we'll start with our top stud here on the outer cover. Like I said, that's where this one goes. We'll gently put that in place, and then we'll work our way around. Okay, with all of our nuts and lock washers in place, we're going to go ahead and start tightening them down. I'm going to start with this middle one here. Just gently bring them into place. Cross up to the top one. We'll crisscross down to the bottom one. Okay, now with the oil pump installed, we can start working on pinion shaft parts and getting the rest of the oil pump finalized. So maybe you can see in here, I'm not sure, but there's a couple of key slots here. And I do have the keys for these, so I'm going to go ahead and get the keys put in place. This one for the back oil pump drive gear and for the oil pump gear that's here. So I want to get those installed and then have them ready to go. All right, now with our keys in place, we'll take our oil pump drive gear and we'll push this in place. There's a flat spot on the back and a rounded spot on the front, and the rounded spot faces forward. So we're going to go ahead and slide this in place. Obviously there is like I said, a keyed slot here. We're going to try to line all of those things up as we slide this in place. Now that I have the oil pump drive gear most of the way in place, the next to go in is this little spacer. So the spacer will go on right here. And then there is another key that goes in the key slot. Try to get that as centered as possible. But before we get too far here, I want to go ahead and get this oil pump drive gear in place. So this actually goes on the shaft here. Slides onto the oil pump shaft. All right, I've moved the motor so you can kind of see what I'm doing in here. You can see there's the oil pump shaft here, and there's the key, and obviously there's the oil pump gear, and there's a key slot on that. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this down in place, line up that keyed slot. I'll have to rotate the engine over just a little bit to maybe make it fit nicely to get the two to play together. Okay, with the oil pump gears installed, the pinion shaft oil pump gear does kind of have a tight fit and it presses almost in place. What I did was I took a wheel spacer and I set it in place, and then I took my end nut and I threaded everything in and pressed that in place. So now that that's all set, I can go ahead and start assembly on the rest of the parts. As you can see, the oil pump drive gear is in place along with the pinion shaft oil pump drive gear. Now there's a spot for a spring clip or clip ring. I do have that. It's just this little guy here. So for this spring clip, I've got my 90-degree spring clip tool here from Milwaukee, and these are kind of nice. They come in various sizes. This gives me just enough room to kind of slide everything in place. And what I'll do is I'll take a pick here and I'll actually seat this. Check and make sure everything is pushed down evenly, so that's all set and ready to go. With the key in place, we'll put our pinion spring in place next, and then we'll put our pinion gear on. With our pinion gear in place, we have our pinion gear nut. Now remember, this is reverse thread, so when we put this in place, we're actually going to be turning it to the left to get it to thread in. We'll hand tighten this down. And then we'll go ahead and finalize it with a wrench. Of course, you'll have to hold everything in place in order to do this. All right, we have our pinion nut torqued to 120 foot-pounds, so that's all set. I'll go ahead and I'll lube up each one of these shafts, and we'll start assembly of the rest of the cam chest here. So if we're looking at our manual here to time this motorcycle, I need to get our pinion gear timed properly. Okay, next let's work on timing the engine. On our pinion gear here, there's a mark here, and this should be straight up and down. So if that one is straight up and down, then I need to, I believe, put in my relay gear next. You can see those marks match up. That's got to go all the way in. Then there's a bushing that goes on the outside edge there, so that's in place now. So next we'll go ahead and we'll put our cam in place. So with the cam in place, you can see the cam gears lined up there. Obviously our gear with our relay gear is there, and then next we'll grab our breather gear. There's a mark on that as well. We'll slip the breather in place, and we'll line these two slots up. You see those lines match. Of course, we'll stick our bushing on, and all of our gears are all set. Those are all timed. Next, we need to put our idler gear on and that bushing. We will slide our idler gear in place, and then our bushing in place. And then all of our gears are timed, and we can watch these go around and around now. It's nice to see that fluid momentum there. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with this engine, I do have to check the end play on the cam itself. I am running the original spacer on the back side of this because I have not altered the cases, nor have I altered the cam cover. I do have the same stock bushing, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the cam cover on. I'm going to take my measure and make sure that that's right, so we'll do that next. Okay, setting cam end play. I'm going to check that next. So I have my bare gasket on, and then I have my cam cover. So we'll go ahead and slide the cam cover in place. We'll put a couple of screws in just to tighten it down, just to hold it in place a little bit. Not going to put them all in. What I've done is I've just put 4 screws in, one on the top and bottom here and here, just to kind of snug everything up. And I'll go ahead and I'll check my end play. It's going to be hard to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cam itself and I'll push it as far forward as it go and move it backward as far forward as it go. So we're all the way forward. We're going to check the gap right in here and see what that distance is. Okay, moving forward. Unfortunately, I do not have the right shim. I did measure it all out. I'm at 11 thousandths of play, so that's too much. Like I said, you need to be between 1 and 5. How you measure the breather gear is you lay your flat edge across the cases here, so you lay it flat, and then you run your feeler gauges between here. Same thing, you need to be between 1 and 5 thousandths. This one was already set, so I know this is good. Next, we need to go ahead and install the, trying to think of the name here, the breather separator and the breather separator screen. So it's just these two parts here. It's this guy that looks like this, and then this screen. And the screen obviously goes inside like that. And then these just go in here like so. Okay, here we are, back to it. I do have the proper cam gear spacing washer in place now, so the end play has been set. One of the things that I ran into was my bushing here was actually loose. So I did have to take this to the machine shop. I had this friction fit, so this is fit properly. It's set in there properly. That way everything plays nicely within the gear chest here. So I should be able to go ahead and put the gear cover on, and then we can start or continue with the assembly. Okay, I've got my cam cover reinstalled. I have my cam installed properly, and I have my proper thrust washer in place. One of the things you need to think about is when you install the cam cover, make sure you check your spacing again. Obviously, I had to replace the bushing on this, so that changed the spacing, and I was no longer able to use the thrust washer that I had for this initially. So I did need to buy new. Unfortunately, I ordered a kit of thrust washers, and they do not all properly measure. What I needed was 65 thousandths. This one actually measures 67 thousandths. Thankfully, I have a local shop in town that had these things in stock, and I was able to buy a 65 thousandths thrust washer. That gives me 30 thousandths of play here. You're supposed to be between 10 and 50 thousandths. I chose right in the middle. I know you're supposed to run these things a little bit looser than tighter, and hopefully that is the right answer. So I have this set up at 30 thousandths. Now we need to go ahead and get my gaskets in place and my lifter blocks and lifters put in. So I have my lifter block gaskets sitting here. I'm going to take a little bit of assembly lube, and I'm going to lubricate the gaskets just to kind of keep them in place, and of course to make them a little bit moist, so that way everything adheres nicely. All right, now I'm ready to install my lifters and lifter blocks. These do move pretty freely, so you gotta be careful with these so they don't slide in and you lose them. course, you want to keep that gasket in place as best as possible too. With the blocks in place, we can go ahead and use our new parts kit. I did get a lifter base screw kit from Colony, so we're going to use those along with their lock washers. All right, we're going to line each one of the holes with little lock washers that they have that came with the kit. With the lock washers in place, we can go ahead and start installing our screws. All right, next we'll go through and we'll torque these to spec. It says it's between 10 and 15 pounds. I've chosen to do 12 pounds, so we'll run each one of these at 12 pounds. We'll do a crisscross pattern on these. With the lifter blocks installed, we'll go ahead and we'll roll the engine over, make sure everything's playing nicely in there. Watch all the lifters come up and down. It looks like everything is rotating freely. Well, friends, that's it for this one. As you can see, the bottom end is completely together for the 1966 Shovelhead. It did fight me a little bit, and there were some issues that came with it. There's still more parts that I need to order. There's things that I don't have for this. I do have them, but there's things I would like to replace. So I need to go ahead and get a list together and start ordering parts. I do have cylinders for this. The pistons for the cylinders are on the way. The heads are going to be rebuilt or heading to the shop to rebuild this weekend, I believe. But once I get the pistons in, I'm going to have them match to the cylinders, and then I can put my pistons and cylinders in place. I do have my timer. I need to get that installed as well. I'll probably do that right before I do the piston install, so that'll be a future video coming up. Of course, if you like the video, give it a like. If you have questions or comments, drop them in that comment section below. I like hearing you guys' feedback, and of course, I'm learning a lot along the way. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you might hit that subscribe button. I've got a lot of work coming up for this bike, and I want to get it together. And of course, if you're not following along, you will miss something. I've got a lot going on in the shop right now. The 1948 WL is getting closer to being done, so there'll be some more videos coming out on that soon. I have this 1966 going, and I have a few more bikes in the works here, so stay tuned. Anyway, friends, that's it for this one. We'll catch you next time.